If you're ADHD, there is a good chance ADHD was identified first. It is not that your autism was too subtle to recognize, it's that no one was looking for it. And once ADHD became the answer, it explained everything, at least until it no longer could. So today, we're looking at why ADHD usually gets identified first and how that can make autism harder to see. Now, to understand that dynamic, you have to start with how autism was defined when we were growing up. Until very recently, autism was expected to follow one very narrow presentation, and if you didn't match that profile exactly, you weren't considered at all. So your autistic traits were given different names. You were anxious, sensitive, difficult, maybe too intense or too much. Whatever was happening inside you was labeled in a way that made it seem like your fault. And you believed it. Why wouldn't you? If something was really going on, wouldn't someone know? Wouldn't they tell you? And if you were diagnosed with ADHD in childhood, that became the singular answer. Until 2013, clinicians couldn't diagnose both. So if one was present, the other was dismissed. Your autism wasn't missed because it was hiding. It might have been missed because no one thought to look. Now, people did notice your autism. They just didn't know what they were seeing. It was attributed to personality or simply being different. It did not register that it could mean something more. And all you knew was that everyone had their struggles, right? So you learned to soften the edges. You scripted conversations and mirrored other people. You stayed agreeable and easy, and you made yourself smaller so your differences would not stand out. Autism mostly affected your inner world. It didn't interrupt anyone else's day, so people moved on. ADHD was different. You masked it by working twice as hard, relying on stress and last-minute panic to keep up, but people still notice. Missed deadlines, dropped responsibilities, trouble at work, strained relationships. Eventually, you made an appointment with a doctor. ADHD was something they could respond to, but struggles that seemed internal, vague, or harder to pin down were labeled as something else, like anxiety, depression, or mood issues. And even if a doctor suspected autism, that was not something they diagnosed themselves. It required a referral, a wait list, and an evaluation that could cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. For most people, it never got to that point. And so ADHD stayed the answer, even when autism was part of the picture. Now, there's another layer to this. ADHD didn't just get diagnosed first. It made your autism harder to see. If your ADHD is more hyperactive or impulsive, those traits can seem like the opposite of autism. You talked a lot, so no one noticed you were struggling to read the room. Novelty was more interesting than routine, so your need for predictability was less obvious. Quick decisions made you seem spontaneous, not like someone who needed more time to process. If your ADHD is more inattentive, it worked differently. Autistic inertia, slower processing, or shutting down under stress can easily be mistaken for inattentive ADHD. So instead of contradicting your autism, the ADHD absorbed it. Your ADHD became the explanation for everything, and once it did, no one thought to look any further. When you got your ADHD diagnosis, it helped. It gave you language for part of your experience, the focus issues, the restlessness, the trouble following through. But as you learned more, something didn't quite fit. Some of your experiences weren't fully explained by ADHD alone, and if medication worked for you, that disparity became harder to ignore. You could focus more reliably, but social situations were still draining. The mental chaos quieted, but sensory sensitivities remained. And once it got quieter, you started noticing what had always been there, but got lost in the noise. You wondered if there was more to it, if something had been missed. That feeling that something else was there, you weren't wrong. You were working with incomplete information in a world that hadn't caught up yet. Understanding this doesn't change the past, but it helps make sense of it. The labels that never fit, the diagnosis that helped but left something unexplained, the question that kept coming back, and now you finally have clarity. If this resonated, please consider becoming part of the AuDHD community on Patreon. There are free resources and community spaces and paid options if you want additional support. The link is in the description down below. Thank you so much for being here today. I'll see you next time.